Reverend Don Lewis, coming to you from the beautiful metaverse, and more specifically from beautiful downtown Danville, Illinois, homeland of the Corellian tradition. And this is Midday with Reverend Don. Welcome. And as you know, if you follow Midday with Reverend Don, you can type your questions or comments onto whatever platform you are watching on, and for most of those platforms, they'll show up here in my chat room. And I want to say again today that I am, for a brief time, offering a special on readings. If you're interested in a reading, I am offering readings at a discount for probably the next 24 hours. You can book it now and schedule it for whenever you would like it. And the prices are $50 for 30 minutes and $80 for an hour, which is a reduction from my normal price. If anyone is interested, they can DM me or email me at donlewishp@aol.com. I hope everyone is having a lovely day. Yesterday, we ended up talking about a number of things, including how to write a book and ideas about writing books. Today, I thought I would offer mini readings. So if anyone is interested in having a mini reading, speak up and we can do one for you. Of course, tonight is Tarot Thursday. Last week was the 2-year anniversary of Tarot Thursday. But tonight you can join Reverend Mary and get mini readings there as well. And I have my cards, and I'm going to cleanse the deck. And I've been doing readings for a long time, and it's been a very interesting journey. I've met so many interesting people. Met a few people who were perhaps more interesting than they might be. Had many adventures. And I've found it to be a fascinating thing. It's interesting to be looking back on life, particularly with the world in the state that it is at present. I sometimes ask myself, how did we get here? But the truth is, it was quite obvious. It's why we had a Corellian peace campaign all these years. And we need peace more now, I think, than ever. So I'm going to start by doing a reading for the... and hello to Renee. I would love to know where I lost my keys. Well, tarot cards can't answer that kind of question. At least not easily. We would need to ask all the different places where you might have put them. And hello to Mary in the chat room. Tarot cards can answer general questions that describe a situation. They can answer yes and no questions. Hello to Kayleen. And Mary asked for a birthday reading. Happy birthday, Mary. And happy birthday also to Arlene Hebert. And Kayleen says, I'm nervous about an informal meeting I'm going to tonight. Would appreciate a mini reading on that, please. Yes, we can do that. And I'm shuffling the cards. You can actually see it from this current camera angle. It used to frustrate me sometimes that with some of the camera angles I've previously used, you couldn't see me shuffling the cards. But you can see them now. And we shall draw 3 cards for Kayleen and tonight's meeting. I've drawn the Queen of Lamps, the Sun, and the Nine of Swords, which is a really interesting group of cards. So I'm going to start with the Nine of Swords. And the Nine of Swords says that whatever you're afraid of in this meeting, and you indicate being nervous about it, whatever that is will have to be dealt with. It is there. It is a real concern. So be prepared to deal with that. However, when you're dealing with it, you may find it easier to deal with than you anticipate. So realize it is a real concern, but not necessarily as frightening as you're making it out to be. The Nine of Swords is called the Nightmare card, and like a nightmare, the issue the card represents can only really hurt you if you fall out of bed trying to get away from it. Or in other words, if in trying to get away from the issue, you make it worse. So face the issue head on. You'll find it easier to deal with than you imagine. The Sun is success. It says you'll actually have a very good outcome from the meeting once you've dealt with that issue. And the Queen of Lamps is magic and using magic to affect your situation. So I would say before you go to the meeting, do some manifestation for a good outcome. And I think you'll find that everything will go well, though you will have to deal with the thing that is causing you nervousness. And hello to Nikki in the chat room, and I hope that was helpful. And now we'll do a birthday reading for Mary and a general reading for Renee. The tarot cards can answer a number of different kinds of questions, but when it comes to something that's choosing from a number of options, it's harder to get a good answer. And hello to Janet Gann in the chat room. And we're going to do a birthday reading for Mary. I hope you're having a wonderful birthday, Mary. And for Mary's birthday, we have the Three of Swords, the Six of Coins, and the Princess of Swords. So the Three of Swords is changes in relationships. Some people read this as the ending of relationships. I have not necessarily found that to be the case, but it does indicate changes. So some of the things around you may be rearranging in the coming few months in terms of relationships. In dealing with that, you have the Six of Coins, which says that the universe will help you, or an individual will help you, but you'll have help in dealing with that and having the result that you would like from it. And the Princess of Swords says to be very careful with your communications in terms of those changing relationships to make sure that what needs to be said gets said, and what perhaps does not need to be said does not get said, and generally using diplomacy. I'm going to draw one more card for you. And I've drawn the Prince of Wands. And the Prince of Wands sometimes has to do with dissipation of energy. So it's saying, try to focus on the things that are important to you in these coming months, and focus on the results that you want as things are changing. And that will help. And there you go. And now a general reading for Renee. And we shuffle the cards. And we shall draw 3 cards for Renee. I've drawn the 4 of Wands, the 5 of Swords, and the Chariot. So, the 4 of Wands is a card of celebration and success in community. So I would say that you're coming up on something very positive, very very celebratory in your life. This will be very good. At the same time, there are things that are not going so well, and I think you're going to find yourself in a dichotomy where, on one hand, certain things aren't going so terribly well, but there are lots of other good things happening at the same time, and it's going to be very important to keep those good things in mind as you deal with the things that aren't going equally well. The last card, the Chariot, says you're going to overcome and move past the things that aren't going as well. They're temporary. You'll move on. But the good things hopefully will continue with you. I'm going to draw one more card. And I have drawn the Hermit. And the Hermit, I've heard described as being the archetypal New Age witch or shaman, manifesting what they desire. You can see in this version of the card, the figure is shown as a magic worker with all of the items of magic and success. So I would say, 1, use some magic on your situations, and 2, know that you can handle all of them. And yeah, there are some unpleasant things just at the moment that have to be dealt with, but many other positive things. And as you move forward, the unpleasant things will be dealt with. So there you go. And now we have a general reading for Janet Gann. We start by clearing the cards. I always clear the cards between every reading. And then we shall shuffle for Janet. And we shall draw 3 cards. And for Janet, we have drawn the 3 of Swords, the Queen of Wands, and the 5 of Wands. So once again, we're starting with changes in relationships coming up. And changes can mean many different things. It doesn't necessarily mean endings. It's not even necessarily bad, but it means change. And look for some of your relationships to be going through changes. You're dealing with this from the position of Queen of Wands, which is a position of being basically happy and satisfied. Overall, you should find yourself getting from these changes the things that you're wanting from them. And in a lot of ways, I would say the best thing to do is to let things come to you in terms of what is happening in your life, rather than trying to force them forward. Allow them to evolve on their own. 5 of Wands says you're going to have mixed feelings. Part of you wants to go one way, part of you wants to go another way. And this is always annoying when it happens. But, it's a natural part of life. Try to be clear on what you want, and you'll be happier with what you get. And again, I would say, for the most part, it's better to allow the things to take shape than to try to make them take shape. And then we have, for your Brian card, we have the Princess of Coins. And the Princess of Coins represents having everything that you need, but holding back from taking action, which is basically kind of the advice that I'm giving for this particular one. There are things you could do, but it's better to just allow things to take the shape they're going to take, and do not rush forward. And that would be my advice for you. And there we go. And do we have anybody else who would like a reading? I think I'm going to do a quick reading for the next few months in the United States, because that's where I'm at. So that's what I want to see. So I'm shuffling the cards. And thank you, everyone, for your questions. And we shall draw 3 cards. We've drawn the 4 of Wands. And you can see me shuffling this deck. We've drawn the Queen of Lamps. And we've drawn the Princess of Cups. So the 4 of Wands, again, is a card of celebration, a card of success, which isn't necessarily what I was expecting to see, but it's a good, positive card. Oh, and Renee says, I found the keys. Congratulations. I'm glad you found them, Renee. With it is the Queen of Lamps, which is magic, which says manifest for what you're wanting. And finally, we have the Princess of Cups, which says, there's going to be a lot of emotion nonetheless. And that only stands to reason because the emotions are so high everywhere already. But yeah, it's not a particularly dark reading. Let me draw one more card. And I've drawn the Hierophant. And the Hierophant says, listen to the voice of Spirit. Let Spirit lead you. Listen for the messages of Spirit, and understanding will come with them. So the way I would take that is to remain connected to Spirit, be guided by Spirit, use magic to manifest the best possible outcomes. And I'm not really seeing anything one might be afraid of. I figure we'll see what happens. But I find that a somewhat comforting reading. We'll see where things go. It doesn't seem like a comforting time, but we shall see. You never know what might happen in the world. I would say that these times we're living through prove that, but all times prove that. The world is always a most interesting place. So do we have anyone else who would like a general reading? Or anything else in the chat? And if not, I will probably, tell psychic stories maybe. This particular style of reading, the drawing of the 3 cards, I've told the story before of how I started doing that, but when I started reading, I did it like most people do it, with big elaborate spreads and trying to collect a large number of spreads for different purposes, and that's fine, and it worked well. But I was working at the D&H Fair Circuit here in Central Illinois, and they required that you give a 20-minute lecture every day. And I was not as used to speaking in public then as I am now, by far. And a number of other readings a number of other readers were doing these mini readings for their lecture to show what they could do for people. So I decided to work with that, and started giving the mini readings, and I found that they worked as well or better than the big elaborate spreads for me. and that Spirit could use them just as easily to give the most important information. And I've tended to focus on 3 cards at a time ever since. I will use other spreads occasionally, um, but for the most part, if I'm doing a card reading, I will do 3 cards at a time, usually 9, maybe 12 cards um, on a particular question in a longer reading, depending what all they have to say. Sometimes it will need to go longer than that. Sometimes 3 cards is enough. But I found simpler, for me at least, worked better, and I find that in a lot of things. So if you're a reader or you're thinking of becoming a reader, my advice is experiment with different styles and see what works well for you. I found for myself that reading quickly, um, well, it developed with time. When I first started reading for J&M fairs, they only allowed half the time for a reading that D&H had allowed. And at first I thought, wait, you can't do a full reading in that short little period of time. And then I found, oh yes, you can. You can do a perfectly good reading in that period of time. You just have to jump into it. There's not a lot of time for slowly entering into the reading. You have to be able to jump right in. But once you've learned that, you can read very quickly. I remember when we were in Salem, we were doing 5-minute mini readings, um, which actually were working out really well for people, even though there were people saying, oh, you can't possibly get anything in 5 minutes. Well, yes, you can. And some people were finding that it completely fulfilled their need for a reading. We were offering them as samples, but they were turning out to be perfectly fine for what the people needed. And if you watch these readings, you'll see that that sort of very short reading can give you all the information you need on many occasions. It depends on how focused it is, depends on how focused um, you are, how focused the answer is going to be. But generally, it will give you a good answer. And um, I therefore am a great fan of shorter forms of reading, but then I'm a Gemini. I would enjoy the shorter forms of reading. I can certainly read in longer forms and do, particularly with other forms of divination. But I found that with tarot, it can be a very quick operation and still be very good. And that's my attitude toward magic also. And in First Degree, as I was talking, I think it was about space cleansing. I pointed out this is really a simple operation when you know what to do. But there are people who will make it very complicated. And there are people who can make a space cleansing into a multi-day operation of huge ceremonies. And that's great, and that works, but it's not necessary. And I find for most things, if you know how to manipulate the energy, it can all be done fairly simply. It does not have to be complex. And yeah, I've been a great advocate of not being complex. And does that always answer what people want to hear? I've often said that people are frequently complaining about not having advanced materials, but then when you deal with them, you find out what they think are advanced materials are just more complicated cookbooks, and that is not advanced material. Now, Kayleen says, when I rarely give a reading, usually runic, I prefer giving shorter readings and also find they work well. Yes, indeed. Um, I think it has to do with the personality of the reader, perhaps. Um, it's weird because, as I was talking about yesterday in terms of writing, my writing is anything but short. And I frequently quarrel with computer grammar programs over ideas like uh, concision and um, keeping things short and simple because I don't really see that as being particularly good writing. But I do see it as good reading. So it's interesting. One of the reasons I don't see it as good writing is that I think you sometimes lose your meaning if you are not careful and sometimes complex in what you say. Of course, I have to admit, chances are the reader is not reading with the same level of complexity that I am writing. But still, I find it advantageous to make sure that I'm saying everything I want to say, even if it sometimes takes a little longer to do so. Because sometimes you can accidentally leave out important things in trying to be short. I know, for example, well, when I was doing Rev Don's vlog, I usually was able to include everything I wanted to include, but sometimes I would look back and say, well, I should have also said X. But because I was speaking off the cuff, I didn't think of it. In writing, I think of it. I make sure that I try to include it. And these are things to think about. And in reading, I think it comes down to really the style that works best for you and what you prefer. And the thing is that divination, whether tarot or any other form of divination, these are infinitely variable arts. They are very adaptable to individual style and preference. Even those that are very, very structured, like astrology, for example. But still, how you pursue it, how you present it, can be very individual. That's why if you look at the writings of different astrologers, you will find their different personalities will bring something to that mix. And Kayleen says computer grammar programs would probably have a fit at the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but I love that humorous style of writing. And that's exactly so. And I think the computer grammar programs are probably perfectly fine for business writing, maybe even for academic writing, neither of which is something that I'm doing. But when we come to creative writing, I think it's a whole different thing. And I don't know that I think constant simplification is going to do anything for the general public level of education. So I was saying yesterday, I've always loved it if I encountered a new word I haven't seen before when I'm reading or watching something. And chances are it will then show up in my vocabulary for the next several days. But it doesn't happen very often now. When I was a child, I and Lady Crystal also used to take the Reader's Digest, and they had a vocabulary builder section. And that was the part we both loved, and we would get together and go through it and look for anything we weren't already familiar with. I was the person who would read dictionaries for fun, and occasionally still will. And certainly encyclopedias. I've always enjoyed the expansion of knowledge. But with that, I see we've come to the end of our half hour. I want to thank you for joining me. Tomorrow, Reverend Phoenix Coffin Williams will be our guest host. I believe that Reverend Alyssa Kemp-Heikerel will be with him, and they will have wonderful things to talk about. I hope you have a lovely day, and let us take a moment for a word from our sponsors. this is Rev Don Lewis coming to you from the beautiful metaverse, and I would like to invite you to my Don Art showing and auction on Friday, May 9th, with original pieces and prints of my artwork and other interesting items, with the auction at 5 p.m. on Whatnot. And please stay tuned for more announcements and examples of art that will be coming. Thank you. And thank you to our sponsors, Equinox Learning Hub, and the Don Art auction coming on May 9th. And I hope you will join us for that. And I thank you for joining us today. And let us close with our prayer, as we always do. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for all that you do for us in our lives, and we rejoice in this walk we walk together. We ask you to help us to always be open to the messages of Spirit and the guidance of the divine. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you with great love. Knowing you are always with us, we thank you from respect, and may you be blessed now and always. May you be blessed now and always, and I'll see you again tomorrow.